And a very good evening, sisters and brothers. Thank you for being here with us. Thank you for allowing us to come into your living room tonight on this very special program as we continue our journey of 40 days of action, 40 days to get us all tired of great nonviolence work. Praise God, sisters and brothers. And we thank you that you have made this journey with us. So as we continue our teachings and our education on active nonviolence, tonight we have with us a very special couple indeed. We have our beautiful Hilary and Sandee Bengochea, and they are just very, very special people. Let's welcome them on our show tonight. Praise God. We want to welcome to our little group here tonight, our faithful people who come to be part of us here in the studio. And we want to thank our lovely choir for leading us on tonight with what we have begun and what we begin all our programs with, Make Me a Channel of Your Peace. Amen? Amen. So it's a wonderful time, and we welcome again, sisters and brothers, all of you who join us. And we know many people join us too on Facebook. We thank you for that. And if you're looking at us on Facebook, why not share that so many more people can listen tonight to a great topic, especially if you have a family, you're going to be very interested in listening to us. And we all come from families, amen?
Amen.
So we want to just hand right over to Sandee and Hilary. And we want to tell you that very soon the line will be open so that you can call and be with us on it, make it as active a program as possible as we rearrange ourselves here tonight to begin our talk.
So thank you very much, Rhonda, and praise God, and thank you for the opportunity to be able to share with you this evening. And we're going to be talking about nonviolence and parenting. And for us, both Hilary and myself, it's a very humbling experience to give a talk on parenting because you only learn to parent by parenting. And, and the faults, and in retrospect, we look back now and we thought, so many things we could have done so much better. And so it's a very humbling experience to stand here and talk about it. For those of you who don't know, we have 4 children, 4 adult children. I hope they're adults. Well, we're hoping, that they're adults. We have 4 adult children. We have 2 granddaughters who are the pride of our lives. And, we're trying to, as grandparents to be a lot better.
Do it a second time.
To do it a second time around. Grandparents give you the opportunity to do it a second time around. Before we actually start the conversation, we would just like to play a song. And, forgive us, the song is an old song. It's an old calypso. And, but it really resonates with parenting in Trinidad 2017. So we're going to listen to it, and if you want, you could just enjoy it. It's a Brigo song that we're going to play. So we could, we could dance, and I am sure we could dance to it as well. And so we're just going to listen to it first, and we want our audience, as the song is being played, if you have children, I know. If our audience might be a little bit matured, if you have younger children with young babies, so young children, and so please just ask them to turn on their sets and look, because I'm sure this evening that a lot is going to be said, a lot is going to be shared that you really would like to be a part of, and also we're going to be opening up the lines in a while, so it will be fantastic to hear from us and to have a conversation about parenting, something that we also that humbles us. I think that's the best word, humbles us so much. So we're just going to start with our song, and you're free to get up and dance as well. I'm sure you'd recognize it. Let's get up. Come on. Sure.
You could stop them from coming, delinquent or violent. But some bound to come out stupid, dotish and ignorant. For listen how some of you parents just talk to your own infants. Do sugar pium, mommy nice side. What a want? Tunkans, tunkulung, tinka. Let me kiss you, let me kiss you, let me kiss you, let me kiss you. A child depends on his parents to teach him some common sense. But when the parent talks so much nonsense, he only learns disobedience. They make the child a true pity from the time he's a young baby. And when he grow a little and start to run around the house, this is how they just talk to him. Rupert! Get in a corner! Both sides! One play! Your father ain't give me a blasted cent. Tomorrow I have to pay the damn rent. And you only wind up me. Look, child, look, don't make me open. Look. Check on them other people, how they train their children from small. When they take up a little infant, you wouldn't hear such nonsense at all. You could stop on the side and notice they never talk such damn stupidness, but they would flash a big smile without getting vile and talk to the child like this. Hello, young fellow. How are you? What's your name? Where's your daddy? Well, my people, tico. Yapping. Take the polish. I'm appealing to you, my people, to them kind of parents is whom I plead. Show your children some good example every day in thought, word, and deed. They check in on your behavior, and if they should follow your lead, is another black hen chicken, an next common breed, to be the bread that the devil need. Not too cans. Mommy nice, I hungry. Mommy nice, I kind for tea. Oh, punkanani. Oh, Rupert! Look, child, don't get me on the wrong side this morning. Rupert, I can't talk to you. Rupert, don't get me. Rupert, pass your mother.
Messages for us when we talk about mixed messages that we send to our children. They start off as babies and we're there and we do it, the little chunkalungs, darling, smile, oh, look at smiling, you know, we do that all the time. And then as they start to grow and reality starts to step in, the violence starts, the blaming. And there's so much, when we talk about violence against children, there is so much, parents, we're talking basically about parental violence against children. There's so much that is, and we're going to start probably with the worst, which I consider to be one of the worst, is sexual violence against children, the sexual abuse against children. And these are taboo topics that we don't that we don't talk about. A lot of times, these are the kinds of topics that we don't like to talk about. So we go straight into it, the sexual abuse against children. And when we think sexual abuse, immediately we start thinking, well, incest, we start thinking, that kind of thing. But there are different levels of sexual abuse. Allowing your child at a very young age to freely view pornography or pornographic material, is also sexual abuse. Allowing your child to not understand and to be exposed to different conversations as well. When the child is mentally and emotionally not ready to do it, it is also sexual abuse of the children. And feel free to stop me whenever you want to, because I know we have an audience with a lot of questions this evening. But sometimes we talk about, and there's a big conversation right now in Trinidad about marriages and young marriages, and we don't want our children to be married at 14, and so there's a big conversation, and we sit and we say, no, we can't have our children getting married at 14 and 13, but we need to take the conversation to the end sometimes. How are we going to take the conversations to the end? Because something, a lot of our 12, 13, 14-year-olds are involved. They have sugar daddies. They come home in the evening with KFC, with cell phones, with money in their pockets. And so where are they getting this? Who cares about where they're getting this? And how many of them have men in their life that are financing the family? So the family chooses to stay silent about it. The mother, or the mother most likely, choose to stay silent about it because the person is a financier. He's financing the family. So we turn a blind eye. And, we turn a blind eye to it and we pretend we don't know about it. Is that violence? Is that violence against your child? You knowingly do it. And yet we stand up and we could proclaim, we don't want our children getting married at 12 years old. Well, once they're doing that, they're already in the game,
Yeah, I agree. I think Trinidadians, listening to this song, we do not like to have difficult conversations. Very often we like to avoid difficult conversations. Very often when we meet couples, besides the sexual violence and the violence, very often it is a lack of communicating. And very often we find that there are difficult conversations to be had, but parents avoid these difficult conversations. So there may be, as Sandy is saying, there may be a sexual song going on in the radio, and you leave the radio on. And the song is very suggestive. Probably you can use the opportunity to engage in a conversation. Now, not all of these conversations can be easy. Recently, I dropped our granddaughters to school in the morning, and some time ago last week, we saw a white dog tied with a very short chain at the side of the road. And, we looked at him. At first, we didn't think it was anything. We just thought the dog was there. But the following day, we saw the dog there again in the same spot. So it looked like the dog slept there overnight. So I turned to my granddaughters and I said, don't you see that somebody's being violent towards the dog? And they say, yes. Well, they call me Dada. Yes, Dada, it looks so. And the following day, we saw the dog tied on the inside now, but again with a very short chain next to a barrel. And it seems like the dog sleeps in the barrel. And on the third day, or the fourth day, when we saw the dog there, my granddaughter said, Dada, if I was the dog, I said, yes. She said, if I got a chance and I escaped, I would run away, I would never come back. And, it struck me here is a 9-year-old girl saying this. And it caused me to have, how do I deal with two things there? How do I find a resolution between, one, they're being violent to the dog, and you don't want to keep the violence, but on the other hand, it's not right to run away. And it challenged me to carry on a difficult conversation with my granddaughter, and so therefore we started to ask, where would the dog run away? What will happen if the dog ran away? And as Sandy is saying, so very often we find ourselves as parents having to deal with children with very, very difficult conversations. And once we keep on, like the song say, I'm a nice child, and we keep on with the simple, superficial conversations, we don't deal with the difficult challenges, you know. I made, up to this morning, again, we passed and the dog was still there. And we've been having a running conversation, and I have not even been able to resolve the issue. Probably I could throw it out to the group afterwards. How do you resolve what seems like a dilemma in that the dog is being badly treated, it's violent, but on the same time, I don't want her to get the message that the dog should run away, because it then tells me that what if when she's growing up, she says, well, I'm not being treated well, so should I run away? And running away could lead to a lot of danger as well.
So we're going to deal with the obvious ones first. So we talked about sexual violence, and we talked about, you know, how we deal with difficult conversations. So we're talking about corporal punishment now, you know, actually beating the child. And the sad thing about corporal punishment, it's cultural in our society. The amount of people that say, you know, well, I get licks, his licks have me so, his licks have me where I am today. And, you know, we say, his licks have me here, and if my father didn't cut my tail, I would never be like who I am today. And we say it all the time, but you know something, it's difficult. I always remember I was at a charismatic meeting many years ago, and I always remember the presenter saying, and it's something that stuck with me and really guided me when I was a young parent myself. And she said, these hands were not made to hurt. These hands were made to love. You know, God gave you these hands not to hurt, but to love. And it made such an impact on my life and my parenting, because, you know, it is so true that this is what it is. And you look at young children, and we do a lot of work with young children, and so many stories that you hear. You know, the other day, there was this young child, and the child would always come and hug me. And she came that day to me. She came up to me, and she said, "Don't touch me." So I said, you know, it was so strange. Why don't touch me? And then she looked at her friend, and the friend told her, you know, the friend gave her the nod. It's okay. And she said, my mommy beat me with a hanger, and my back is in a mess. You know, so, and this is, I am talking about a fragile little person. And, you know, and she was just like, and you know what was really sad about that? She was smiling. She was smiling, you know. She was smiling about it. And we hear about these things all the time. And we, in doing workshops on nonviolence, so one of the symbols of the way you accept violence, the way you deal with violence is acceptance. You know, so we can either pretend there's no violence happening and look away from it, like we spoke about earlier with sexual violence, you know, the sexual abuse against our children. We could just pretend it's not happening because the person is the financier, they're helping, and so. And then there's this one called acceptance. And what really is heartbreaking to me is when we look at parents and children and their relationship with children, and how many children tell you very clearly, yes, you have to accept the violence. I said to them, do you really have to accept the violence? When do you? She said, and we accept the violence every time. You have to accept the violence. And no matter how much I try to get them to move from here to here, to know, you know, you can do something about it, they said no. And, you know, it's a frightening thing, it's a sad thing, because it shows how vulnerable they are. First of all, how vulnerable they are. And secondly, how much they trust you. How much they trust you as a parent to believe that the more licks I get, the better I will be. And I deserve the licks. And I am not talking, and I am talking across the board. I am not talking about, you know, whenever we hear these stories, we think of lower class, and we tend to like to categorize. That don't happen to us. That don't happen to them. That don't happen. I am talking about across the board. Across the board. The children are like this. They are accepting the violence. Because you know what? It's institutional violence as well. It's happening in my home. Yeah, mommy beats me, daddy beats me viciously. I am viciously, and I have to accept it, and I have to accept it every time because he's my father, because he's my mother. And he comes home angry, and he might be drunk, and he might be upset with my mother, and he might be whatever, and the business might be going bad, and he may have lost his job, and he may be having all kinds of adult problems in his life, all kinds of adult problems happening in his life. But you know what? This is an easy victim to beat on. So you come home, and the slightest thing they say, the slightest things these children say, we get like the song, you know? Your father didn't give me a cent, and tomorrow I have to pay the rent and everything else, and whap, whap. And it's so easy. It's so easy to do it. And you just stand like that. And they tell me every time, we have to accept it. They have to accept it every time.
When we speak about nonviolence, nonviolence is not an absence of conflict. There will always be conflict in the home. Nonviolence is how we deal with conflict. In the story with the dog is being abused, and then my granddaughter she says the dog should run away. And it causes conflict. I think nonviolence is not that there would never be conflict. It's how do we deal when there is conflict in the home. Nonviolence is an approach, a way of living that does not descend from, that conflict does not have to be responded to with a violent response. How can we, whether it is in bringing up the children, how can we respond to them when we have conflict? How can we face conflict, and how can we deal with conflict in a non-violent manner? One of the challenges of the song, one of the challenges of what is going on is having difficult conversations. Recently on the newspaper, you would have heard that a grandmother, there are 3 people living in the house, the grandmother, the young girl, she's 8 years old, and a male relative. And the Children's Authority found out that the girl was being sexually molested. And then they asked the grandmother, didn't you know this was going on? And her answer was no, well, he did that to other relatives, but I thought he over that by now. And I think very often it comes back to that point, that as Trinidadians, very often we try to avoid difficult conversations. Granny may have seen what is going on. She may have intuitively known something was going on, but she chose to show a blind eye. According to some boys recently, I was talking to them, they say Trinidadians look the other way. And very often neighbors as well. I was thinking that this home, there must have been neighbors around, and the neighbors must have known what is going on. But again, the neighbors look the other way. So when we speak about non-violence, we're speaking about how can we be brave enough to deal with conflict, sometimes initiate conflict. Granny probably wanted to keep the peace, but in keeping the peace, the young girl was molested. Granny would have had to cause conflict in order to be able to protect the child. When we speak about non-violence, very often we get the preoccupation that non-violence is all about, like nirvana. That's not non-violence. Non-violence is having the ability sometimes to cause conflict. In Trinidad, that we have a lot of conflict. But it is how we deal with the conflict. And I would dare say that in Trinidad, what has happened is that we reach the violent responses by ignoring the early signs of something going wrong. We allow it to pass. Parents allowing their children to get away with things on an early stage. They don't want to deal with it. Parents want to be seen as nice. Parents want to be seen as a friend. Parents want to be admired by their children and their children's friends. But in doing that, they avoid conflict. And by avoiding conflict, we can begin to think that that is nonviolence. That's not nonviolence. Very often, nonviolence may mean to cause conflict. But how we cause conflict, how we respond to conflict, we have to respond to difficult situations by having difficult conversations and not letting it reach to the point where then it breaks out into physical or emotional or verbal violence.
Yes, and I just want to continue with what Hilary was saying about teaching our children to manage conflict, because I think that's important, teaching our children to have these difficult conversations. And I spent today actually at one of our Catholic schools working with little children and teaching them to manage conflict among themselves, you know, and it was amazing how they picked up on it. It was amazing how they were able to share their stories, how they were able to, and we did real life situations, you know, we didn't make up, we had real situations. Come, you were having a conflict with you, okay, come, let's talk about it here, come up at the front and let's talk about it. And it was amazing how, through using techniques, and so they were able to deal with it. But you know, the bigger thing is, as parents, if we address conflict with our children and we tell them we need to talk about this, I feel, you know, when you do this, when you come home late at night and I don't know where you are and you don't call, I feel very nervous. It's not that I don't trust you. It's not that I don't believe you know, you or so, but I just feel very nervous. So I would really appreciate it. And listen to the response. And so, because a lot of time, you know, what we like to call bacchanal in Trinidad, bacchanal is caused because instead of having the conversation here with what is happening, we go there. And we go there and we say, you know what he did? Let me tell you what he did. And you know, and that's what causes it. And we do the same thing in our families. We do the very same thing in our families. You know, rather than discuss it, and we're teaching our children, you know, we teach our children, be careful what you do, they're learning. They say that we should preach always and speak only when we must. And that is so true. That is so true, because that's how they learn, you know, through our conversation. So I don't know if you have any questions at this time or any comments. I'm sure there's a lot of things that you want to say. And we've opened up the lines as well, so we'd love to hear from our viewing audience. Please call us if you have any comments, if you would like to add, if you have any questions. I'm sure among us here we'll be able to get some kind of conversation. Yes, Dave?
Sandy, just a couple of points here. Getting back, Hilary, to your story with the dog.
Yes.
I think the child may have made a perfect, or may have offered a perfectly rational solution.
Yes.
Because, I mean, it's on the fourth day that she said this.
Yes.
Right. Now, really and truly, what other recourse is available to a dog?
But that's why I haven't been able to solve it.
Right. A dog, that's the only thing a dog can do. So she realizes perhaps that is the only thing a dog can do, and what can, a dog can't report any kind of abuse. So I'm suggesting that there is a little bit deeper in that situation.
You know, there's also a calypso about that.
Well,
dog does run away.
Right.
What happened to you, darling? You could run away too.
I wanted to talk a little bit about the conflict, the parent-child conflict. You know, the way things have evolved from the days that, you know, we were young children and so on. Tough love. There's a very, very thin line between tough love and abuse.
Yes.
And society has encouraged that line to become thinner. We have put all sorts of things in place that prevent us from sort of exerting sort of disciplinary behavior on children. All sorts of things. I mean, here is not as bad as some other countries where you could pick up a phone and call and the police can be in front of your house in 3 minutes. But where I think the problem is a systemic problem. We have an angry population. There are people out there who are just living their daily lives with anger. And one of the worst things to do is to try to treat conflict when you are angry. And I am thinking that perhaps too many relative conflicts, family, close family, other distant family, etc., treated when there is a situation of anger. And we can never, ever come to a proper resolution when you do that. So I am thinking perhaps we have an issue to deal with, which is much deeper than just the simple term conflict resolution. I think it goes a lot deeper than that. And another, just to close off here, on another point that you made earlier about child abuse with the children and getting married and whatever. Several of our grandparents and great-grandparents got married at a very early age. I mean, people who are in their 80s and 90s now will tell you that they were married at 13 and 14 and so on. Their marriage remained intact. They never had any sort of violence. So I am suggesting that what we are dealing with, again, is a systemic problem where you do not have that support mechanism that you had. Everybody's on their own beat. The parents, the grandparents, everybody is concerned about themselves. And that support system that we had or our parents or grandparents had when they were children, that just doesn't exist anymore. It simply does not exist. And that is one of the issues that we're dealing with.
Sandy, I was watching, talking about child sexual abuse. I was watching a program on BBC, I think it was Saturday or Sunday, sometime over the weekend. And they were talking about it's the Philippines, where parents were actually selling their children over the internet for people to come over from all over the world, children as young as 2-3 years old, and being sexually abused by these people. And when they interviewed the children, they thought they were doing nothing wrong. It's just how they thought it was normal life. So they, in the end, had to go and rescue these children from their parents. They came out screaming, and so all over the world, I think, especially around that sort of area, Philippines, Manila, I think it was, in the Philippines, where they're actually selling their children, and I'm sure that's happening in many other places all over.
Yes, and they what you just said there, the children didn't think they were doing anything wrong, because if mommy and daddy gives me to you, and these are the people that I'm supposed to trust and love, and they give me to you, and this is what you do to me, then I have to accept it. I am accepting it because you should know what's best for me. And that's the scary thing about parenting, You should know what's best for me. And it's in our hands to know what's best for the children. And Dave, managing conflict in families, you're so right that we should not try to manage conflict at the moment. And that's why we always say, that first of all, you need to center yourself. And Hilary and I made a lot of mistakes in parenting, but one thing that I feel very proud of that we did was when our children were young, we used to have weekend meetings. And on weekends, we would sit down with the four of them, and we would say, tell us what upset you this week. So if it's something we did, if it's something one of the others did, or so tell us what upset you this week. And they were little at the time, and it was very, very effective, because sometimes they would tell me very clearly what I did that upset them, but it was in an environment, it was in a space, a sacred space that it was spoken, and it was not the moment. And they knew that when the weekend came, that they would have this time to have this discussion with us, and it was an accepting environment. And, for me, it worked, because even now, the children, as intense as the conversations might get, and they do get quite intense, but they do have the conversations. They do challenge me to have the conversations. And sometimes it's scary for me, because I don't know if I'm prepared anymore, and it's another world. And you think you're hip and happening, and then they come along, and they're hip and happening. You just better, So,
yes, I think we are tackling the young people, the kids, no? But I think we should have some parentage program for the schools, the school children, parents to come out, because they are the little ones, you are coaching or advising them, and they're going back home to the same dirty homes.
Yeah.
You understand what I mean? And they are going right back into that same environment, etc. So the parents need to be taught and you know.
Yes.
I'd just like to make a comment here on that. You're right. But the movement that we're doing now, even children can take responsibility. And that's the whole idea of this new movement. Non-violence begins with me. So those children, yes, I mean, we know what situations many of our children go home to, right? But how I go home as a child can make a big difference. And we have seen that even in these 40 days that we are doing right now, and the encounters that we have had with different groups and children and so, we have seen that really do something. If the child can learn to be a non-violent child in the right way,
Yes.
in the right way,
Yes.
right? Understanding that non-violence begins with me, that many times a child might have the power, for want of a better word, to
Yes.
quell that violence at home.
Like as I told my young children today, I said, if you think you're too small to make a difference, try sleeping with a mosquito. You know, that was the Dalai Lama, not me. Yeah, so we have a caller. We have a caller online. Welcome. Thank you. Caller.
Hello? Hello?
Yeah. But we're not hearing very clearly.
Hello?
Yes.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. I'm listening to your program. Very, very, very interesting and informative program. Although I have grown children, you know, and what I want to say is I think that they should have parenting as a subject in Form 5 at school. Because the crux of the matter is the foundation of the child is from home. You understand? What we put into the children at home is what comes out. You know? And then we still have no guarantees because you put 1,000,000% into it. And then when they grow up and they have peer pressure out there and they have all the influences out there, everything could turn all mass. But you know, you can have the satisfaction of knowing that you have done your best as a parent from the time they're born. To me, primary school is the hardest, you know? And it starts from home, from the parents. From the time they're born, we have to put our best foot forward.
Yeah. I think.
Yeah.
Go
That's
ahead.
my contribution.
Thank you.
Again,
Thank
I
you
would
very
still
much.
like to say that's true, but the child can also respond. The child is going to school to learn. They're learning arithmetic and English and history and geography and science. They could learn how to be nonviolent.
Yes.
So we have to make an opportunity for children. If they cannot learn nonviolence in their homes and they're experiencing violence in their homes, they can learn how to deal with that. And that is what this movement is about. That's what brings hope. We cannot have a negative approach
Yeah.
to this.
And you know, I'd like to introduce the word today in the program, soul force. And a child can bring it. And soul force is that when a child speaks truth, you know, when you speak truth, people recognize truth. And, you know, we say the desiderata, speak your truth quietly and clearly. And a child coming home with this learning and comes to the parents and speaks truth. Soul force is powerful. But we have another caller. Good evening. Thanks for calling.
Hello, good evening.
Good evening.
I'm calling from Arima. I'm enjoying your program. I am a mother who had my children very young, and I felt that I could have done more for them as a mother, but I was not matured enough, but I still did bring them up in the right manner in going to church and stuff like that. And I thank God that they are grown adults today with their own children, and you know, they have never broken the law or anything, and I'm quite happy about that. But I still feel guilty as a mother that I did not do enough for my children. And because of that now, I think I am beginning to dwell on that mistake in life, and I would like some advice from you tonight how to deal with it. I am a good grandmother because I have 7 grandchildren now, and I give my grandchildren the love and my nephews. But somehow I still feel that guilt of having children too young, and that come about because I did not have a mother, although my grandmother tried to bring me up in the best way.
Well,
So,
sister,
listening to your program, and may God continue to bless you all. And I always tune into this program on a Wednesday night and during the Lenten season. God bless.
thank you very much, and thank you so much for sharing that. But I just want to tell you something, sister. Welcome to the club. Well, I don't know. I'm sure we have mothers here. I want the mother who felt that she has no regrets, no guilt, who never thought she could have done it better, to put up your hand. Nobody. Nobody.
I just wanted to continue with the conversation about having difficult conversations. As parent, and as a parent myself, I find in the modern times, very often it is a lack of conversations more than how you carry out the conversations. I have found a lot of the modern day parents avoid conversations, and even though your conversation could be a difficult conversation and you may not say everything correct, by just having the conversation, I think you are well on your way. So I would like to encourage parents to not to be shy. Don't believe that you don't have the answers. Don't avoid the conversations in the hope or the mistaken belief that you don't have the answers. I think it is more important to engage in a conversation, even without a solution. But the actual engaging in the conversation brings the bond. I mean, I just wanted to continue the story with the dog.
You have a question?
I want
Yes.
to continue with the story with the dog too. That child said the dog should run away.
Yes.
And your wife said, the saying went, dog does run away, cat does run away.
No, the wife
Why
didn't-
you can't run away?
The wife didn't say that. The wife said
No.
there is a calypso that says
That was an old saying.
Yes, yes.
That was an old saying.
Yes,
And
yes.
I was a typical example of that. Because I was struck about 8 times. I didn't run right away. You have to plan and go very quietly. Keep the peace. Keep the peace. Avoid the conflict. And then just leave. And it remained peaceful to the end. And I was able, with the help of God,
Praise God.
to bring up my children properly. And they were 2 very successful men today. The next thing is, I don't know if it's fortune or misfortune, but right now, I live in the midst of one side, a child is being terribly abused. And on the other side, and at another home that I'm very aware of, the children are having too much freedom. And these are babies. And as a grandmother, I could see where it's leading. My perception is very good in that direction. And it hurts me. You know, I lock myself in because I don't want to see and I don't want to hear because I can't interfere. I cannot intervene in either one. I try calling the cops on one side for about 6 times. They never respond. But that child is going to die one day. I have a good friend who is a social worker who is trying to find out the school that child is going to have investigated physically, because the licks goes on for like 20 minutes and it hurts. Makes me cry.
I just wanted to comment on the fact that violence is made to look so attractive as a reasonable option. And that only came to me when I was speaking to a young woman in her early 20s who had been gang raped more than once in her life. And she responded to her children with the same violence. And she was so proud that she was able to exert violence on her children. And she saw non-violence or any option, other option, as unattractive and not strong and not empowering. And I just wanted to contribute that violence is not attractive. It's not attractive as a personal trait. It's not attractive as an aspiration. Dominance is not attractive just because it diminishes the other person. It's not attractive. And therefore, if that message as an alternate message goes along as well, then perhaps nonviolence will continue to find some momentum because violence is not attractive.
And I'm glad you mentioned that because, when we look at our cartoons now, Tom and Jerry, when we look at SpongeBob, when we look at, if we want to go back to our time, Popeye, and we look at it, violence is celebrated. So violence begets violence, So Bluto goes and he beats up on the man. He beats up on Popeye. And Popeye goes and he takes his spinach and he gets his big muscle. So he comes and he beats him back and he beats him and he kicks him off into space. And then he gets a kiss from Olive. And that, isn't that the storyline in our cartoons and we do it and the children are seeing it all the time. So when we talk about allowing our children, when we talk about allowing them and introducing them to violence, sometimes we think that violence is about licks and about what we do as well, and we beat on the children and corporal punishment and incest and so. But allowing your child to look at these shows is really, instilling a violent mind into the child. And so the child sees nothing wrong with doing that. Like even, we talk about verbal abuse. Today we were doing a workshop and the children said, because Mrs. sometimes we talk to them because they're ugly. So I said, ugly? Somebody's ugly? I said, what do you mean by ugly? Yes, miss, they're ugly. If you're ugly, you're ugly. And you listen to them, it's because, this one prettier. Oh God, Trinidadians, we do. This one's so pretty. Oh God, and the dark one, and this one didn't come out too bright. This one, and you hear it, SCA. You can't pass. What school you put in? You can't pass for there. What you put in there for? Can't put this school. And we tell our children these things. We tell them these things, and then they go and say it in public, and you wonder where my child learned that from. And sometimes we need to take our thinking to the end. Look at the consequences of what we are saying. A lot of times we're not looking at the consequences. Where is this conversation leading? And what is it putting in the mind of my child? What is it putting in the mind of our child? And the other one we wanted to just touch on is emotional violence as well. Emotional violence, putting the blame and the burden on the children. You are to blame. I in this because of you. If you didn't leave, you made a decision. But a lot of women are telling their children that I taken this because of you. If it wasn't for you, I wouldn't be in this mess. If I didn't have you. How many of us tell our children, I wish you were never born. Let's get real. If we talk about our son, and we hear it all the time in our training room. My son, you see this because you are gay. I don't even want you to carry my name. I don't want you to be, I don't wish you were never born. I wish you would die. We tell our children that. If you bring a belly here for me, you might as well. You shame this family and you're this and you're that. And we use the language, we tell them that. And the child, of course, is there. And the child now has to live, and you have to now live through that. What do? It's emotional violence. You're teaching violence. And, so much of it as parents, we we like to look there, but sometimes we need to look here. You know, nonviolence begins with me. So we have a caller.
Yes.
Welcome.
Yes.
Please.
I am calling. I'm looking at the program, and I am 84 years old, a grandmother, a great-grandmother. And what I've noticed over the years is that sexual abuse don't come from outside, you know. This is something that happens in the home. The fathers, the uncles, the brothers, the cousins, those are the ones who abuse the girls, the young girls, our own children. The old-time fathers used to say, they're cutting track for Guti to run.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank
very
you.
much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And to all the other callers, thank you so much. So I'm going to hand back over to Rhonda, who is going to tell us all that's going to be taking place within the next 40 days. So thank you very much for allowing us this time and this space in your life to chat.
Thank you, Sandy and Hilary. Thank you very, very much. Praise God.
Praise God.
Well, that was very interesting. You know, these conversations that we have here on a Tuesday night are indeed very, very interesting. And a lot has happened, I think. I thank God for all that has happened in these few months, you know, of really bringing an awareness. This was the whole intention of these 40 days of action that we're on, to bring us an awareness of what it means to be nonviolent, and an awareness to realize that I am violent. Look at this situation that Sandy and Hilary see every day, and that we all see in our families, in our communities, in our schools. Every single area in our workplaces, we talked about that in the last few weeks. Every area across the board, we are seeing violence. So the only response that we can do is be nonviolent, and to learn how to be nonviolent, to learn how to stop the violence. As a child, we have to learn that. As elderly people, as parents, as mothers, as single mothers, as women, as men, we have to learn. Yes, it begins with me, and I have to learn how to be nonviolent. That's the only way, sisters and brothers, that I really see that we could move this wave of violence in our land and in the whole world. And all over the world, they have these nonviolent movements because people realize for years now that that's the only response in the face of violence, nonviolence. So this is what this program is about. This 40 hours of prayer that we began, going into 40 days of action. And every single day in these 40 days, we have a lot of action happening where we are going out to people. People are getting in touch with us, schools, organizations, businesses, individual concerned citizens. They want to be on board, to be, yes, I want to be, understand that violence begins with me, and I could be a non-violent person in the face of all this violence. As you know, maybe you know, and maybe many of you know already, Friday this week, the 24th, we are having, and we are asking people all over Trinidad and Tobago to have a candlelight gathering. For what reason? So that each community would recognize the violence within their communities and to pray together, to offer in a special way up to God, offer those victims of violence in every area in our country. I have today on my desk a list of every person that has been murdered in this country since the 1st of January last year, coming into this year. Every single person. And on Friday night, we're going to take that and we're going to offer every single person that has died to God for mercy and for their families, for grace and courage and consolation for their families. So we are asking you, as we ask all of us here, to find an area in your own, wherever you live, find out where it is happening, and join that candlelight gathering to pray for the victims of violence in our communities and in our country. Just to give you a quick, this ad will come out in the newspaper tomorrow and Friday, and it's going to be listing some of the areas, not all areas, because we have over 30 areas in Trinidad and Tobago that will be having candlelight gatherings, and many more that maybe we don't know about. But these are the people who have got in touch with us. We have in Pitti Valley, we have in Diego Martin, we have in Carenage, and we have in St. James, and that's in the west. In Port of Spain, we have Mandela Park, Beetham Gardens, Boy Scouts, Belmont. In the east, we have St. John the Baptist, St. Charles, House of Praise, Egbert, Allen Park, Nettoville, Bonaire Gardens in Arouca. In the south, we have Nazareth in Marriott Street, Mizpah Presbyterian in Claxton Bay, St. Anthony's in Point Fortin. In Tobago, we have in Lambo and many other places. So we're encouraging you on Friday night to join a candlelight gathering to pray and to offer and to give support to the families of victims of violence, and also to just be present and be aware and start to talk in our communities about non-violence. Let's start a talk, and let's recognize, sisters and brothers, violence begins with me. Let me deal with my violence, how I am violent. A child, a woman, a man, whoever we are all violent. Let's deal with it, and let's bring a whole wave of non-violence to our country. We just praise God and thank God for the opportunity that we have in this month. We thank you for your support and your blessing. And we ask God to bless our beautiful land of Trinidad and Tobago and to make that journey to non-violence. God bless you all. And thank you again, Hilary and Sandy, for being here with us.